As the Money Burns is an original podcast by Nikki Woodard. Based on historical research, this is a deep exploration into what happened to a set of actual heirs and heiresses to some of America's most famous fortunes when the Great Depression hits. Each episode has 3 primary sections. Section 1 is a narrative story. Section 2 goes deeper into the historical facts. Section 3 focuses on contemporary, emotional, and personal connections. Story recap. Cobina Wright returns with her circus ball, while Doris Duke faces off again with the taxman while being linked to a British earl. Now back to As the Money Burns, Renouncing the Throne. Pending nuptials bring more attention to a royal fiancé and his questionable lineage. Section 1. Story. Love is never simple when it comes to money or royalty. Ulterior motives and other obligations can complicate matters infinitely. No wonder heiresses find noble connections more alluring at times. Though the ideal is to gain a title, a fortune, and love all at the same time, in more tragic romantic scenarios, some are more than willing to give up a title or fortune for love. The press is on watch as it awaits the arrival for the next future American dollar princess to join those illustrious ranks. Friday, May 19, 1933, Marseille, France. The ocean liner Chitral arrives from the Far East, bringing the precious cargo, a slightly less chubby budding fashionista heiress Barbara Hutton, along with her not-so-secret fiancé, ruggedly handsome but not quite so impoverished Russian prince, Alexis Mdivani. Meanwhile, from the opposite direction, aboard the ocean liner Europa, Barbara's astute financier father, Franklyn Hutton, and stepmother, Irene Curly Bodie Hutton, arrive in Paris. Franklyn needs to have some intense conversations with his daughter and her fiancé about legal and financial matters before agreeing to the official engagement. Time is pressing as he has only months before Barbara reaches her majority and thus no longer under his supervision. Franklyn is insistent that Alexis will not take control of Barbara's immense fortune, as would be the husband's right under French law, where the couple will likely reside. Franklyn has spent weeks in negotiations with Mdivani brother-in-law, lawyer Charles Ubrick, and other legal counsel. They argue for the French rule, but Franklyn is hardline against it. Finally, the agreement will be that Alexis will be given $1 million up front with a $50,000 annual allowance. In 2024, that would be $24 million up front with $1.2 million annual allowance. The prince has been raking it in since his $1 million divorce settlement in 1932 from first wife Louise Astor Van Allen. Saturday, May 20th, 1933, Paris, France. In the morning, the prince and Barbara greet her parents at the Gare de Lyon train station before heading off to the Ritz Hotel. There they have a luncheon where they discuss the final terms, after which the newly engaged couple visit friends, then take a dog for a walk. That afternoon, Franklyn announces to the papers that discussions are ongoing and that his only goal is to ensure that his daughter will be married for love and not for her fortune. Such a gallant and protective father, and what a twist from when he warned Barbara as a young child that she will only ever be loved for her money. Barbara is more than willing to let the men hash out the legal and financial terms as she is more interested in planning the details of the matrimonial ceremony. Her fashionista and romantic sides are ready and waiting to be unleashed. Alexis, too, seemingly yields to Franklyn's requirements. But that is only because the prince knows he will surely get his way by other means. Barbara is far too amenable to his influence already. Later, more talk in private. Hours pass by as Franklyn and Alexis square away financial matters before fully confirming the matrimonial date and plans. Sunday, May 21st, 1933, The official announcement comes out. Franklyn proudly proclaims his approval of that fellow for his daughter after assuring that this will be a love match. The father admits to receiving plenty of cranky and crazy letters advising against the marriage, but he waves off the disapproval, having done his own due diligence. Barbara and Prince Alexis will be united on June 20th, a civil ceremony as required by French law, and then possibly a religious ceremony. Some mistakenly assume the Mdivanis are Muslims of the Mohammedan religion, meaning Muslim and Islam. But Alexis corrects the matter by stating he is Russian Orthodox, like all Russian nobility must be. Barbara delights in the idea of having a more exotic theme for her wedding to set her apart. Which leads to another interesting requirement by Franklyn. Newspapers also mention another stipulation, that Prince Alexis must give up any claims or pretendership to the throne, as in the Georgian throne. Has there ever been known to be a princeling or princeship available in the Russian province, now Soviet state of Georgia, the birthplace of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin? And even if there was, or would become again, how likely would that occur while the communists are still in power? This brings up so many questions and debates, especially surrounding the royal titles of prince and princess, one that has been in dispute over the years, despite Prince Sergei Mdivani paying a researcher in 1927 to trace their title lineage back for a defamation claim against a New York magazine. However, it is their recently deceased father, General Zachary Mdivani, who might most hurt their claims, as he frequently stated they were not royal. He even joked that he is the only person to have inherited the title from his children. He claims they are Russian, not Georgian, and they are noble, not royal. General Mdivani served as an aide to the last Russian Tsar, Nicholas II Romanov. One photograph pictured the two standing together, legitimizing that claim. Regardless, all 5 Mdivani siblings, like their now deceased mother, claim and defend to the hilt their royal lineage. Alexis is the 3rd son, so even if there was a claim, he's the spare of the spare. But then again, that could become a possibility in case of pesky technicalities. But there are others having to debate similar issues, like another, beyond doubt, more legitimate dispossessed heir, Prince of Asturias, the Spanish equivalent of the Prince of Wales for the heir apparent. The son of recently deposed King Alfonso XIII, and also named Alfonso, has announced his engagement to a beautiful Cuban commoner. The Spanish throne, like the Russian Romanovs, will not allow morganatic marriages, in other words, uneven, non-noble mixed alliances, to retain title and power. King Alfonso disapproves of the marriage, but this prince insists he willingly gives up his royal rights and will gladly call himself Count de Covadonga. Speaking of the Prince of Wales, Prince David was spotted the week before making short aviation trips here and there, including to a golf course. The flying prince is doing what he can to encourage more private air travel. Supposedly, there is also a flying premier. And another royal is making his way back to London. The Maharaja of Alwar has fled his Indian state and will be gone for 2 years due to a recent rebellion. While the Maharaja prefers his home country, he has agreed to an extended holiday, but arrangements are made at his new location to avoid violations of his strict religious Hindu creed, such as coming into contact with cowhide chairs at the doctor's office. It seems silly to hold on to what once was but is now gone, or likely had never been in the first place. But how things do persist far beyond their rationalities. Thus, more twisted tales of love, royalty, and fortune to follow. Section 2, History and Historiography. Long before I ever stumbled across the article that eventually led to this podcast, I had a deep interest in dynastic and royal histories. In fact, my passion for history stems first and foremost with a love of fairy tales. My real obsession with history kicked off after my mom returned from a 2-week trip to England with a small side trip to Paris and Versailles, and brought me a book on the kings and queens of England. Only a few years earlier, I had watched with her the wedding of Prince Charles and Diana on television. As I flipped through my book, as well as looking at the photos of Versailles, it dawned on me that those fairy tales and myths that I like so much had a basis and relevance to history. Those costumes had been real outfits. Those sets, not just fictional fantasies. Those titles, people actually had them. Such a life so different than the modern one I lived in Texas. I fell in love over and over again with literature, art, and whatever signifies the evolution of a culture. I was and am fascinated by many from around the world. As I went to public school and met other kids from immigrant families, I tried to pay attention to anything I could learn about their culture as they lived within mine. And each time I secretly delighted when I discovered a new set of royals. Even better, the list seems endless around the world throughout time. A point of reference and of familiarity, and yet different each time. Studying those histories and cultures has prepared me to also notice patterns. The beginning, the rise, the golden period, and inevitably the decay. My lessons in historiography during grad school were formulated around Edward Gibbon's The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, published in over 6 volumes from 1776 to 1788. This work was to be used as a guideline to develop equivalent scholarship on the much relatively newer academic topic of the Middle East. Beyond the technicalities of academia, the subject matter with its same patterns can be applied to various governments and financial empires. Characteristically, I asked one of my graduate professors to recommend a book with comparative world timelines, and he did. The Outline of History by H.G. Wells. I once wanted to make a large wall chart of world royalty so that I could better see the connections and overlaps. When I started this podcast, I had no idea I was going to be incorporating so much of my long-term academic interest. But of course, I'm absolutely delighted. As mentioned in previous episodes, the concept of being royal and especially reigning royalty is something very hard to let go. So of course, I love that it plays so much into the formation of these tales and the myriad of ways it creeps in. Before World War I, it could be safe to assume that most nations were ruled by monarchies, maybe like 80% or more, but that number drastically reduces after World War I. According to Wikipedia, from 1914 to 2015, in Europe alone, monarchies fell from 22 to 12, while republics expanded from 4 to 34. But that can also be misleading. From 1400 to 1900, many smaller kingdoms assimilate into larger empires. Thus, most of the territory and populace would be under some form of monarchy. King, sultan, shah, emperor. At the dissolution, the former territories of empires would now become their own sovereign nations, thus a large multiplicity in replacement of an overarching system. Nowadays, a new nation is likely to be declared a republic of some sort versus a monarchy. Very rarely is monarchy ever reestablished in modern times, Spain, Kuwait, and Cambodia being some of the very select few. As previously discussed, various pretenders and claimants always appear even for defunct thrones. And with a large and sudden abandonment of monarchy, there are a plethora floating around in the 1920s and 1930s. It was du jour and not uncommon for anyone to overstate their past nobility with very little need of proof or any ongoing legitimacy. So to discuss the situation better with the Mdivani royal claim, we would first need to know if there is even a claim to be made. Forewarning, I cannot guarantee all my pronunciations are correct. The modern nation-state of Georgia is located in the Caucasus Mountains between Turkey and Russia. By 6th millennium BC, agriculture comes into the region due to the proximity to the Fertile Crescent. The ancient empires of Hittite, Greek, and Roman have all ruled parts of the region. By 337 AD, King Mirian III adopts Christianity. In 580 AD, the Persian Sasanian Empire invades, and the Arabs later in 645 AD. Parts of the area would be split between Christian Byzantine rule and influence and Muslim-dominated areas. From 1184 to 1213, the first female ruler, Tamar, would find herself in foreign policy matters between the Seljuk Turks and the Eastern Holy Roman Empire of Byzantium. In 1226, Khwarezm leader Jalal al-Din will invade and then Genghis Khan. The Mongols will be expelled between 1299 and 1302. Ongoing battles in the 1400s to 1600s with Ottoman, Turkish, and Persian Safavid neighbors, Georgia would be divided into 3 independent kingdoms and 5 semi-independent principalities, some of which would align with the Russian forces. It is after this period that the Mdivanis have claimed that an ancestor, Solomon Mdivani, is bestowed the title of prince in 1752 or 1753 in thanks for military service and valor to the Georgian Tsar Heraclius II, or Irakli II. Previous Mdivani lineage and title history information has been covered in Episode 15, Tales of Two Princes, and Episode 49, Revelations and Resolutions. Please note, depending on the sources, there may be contradicting dates or spellings, the latter due to transliteration issues. By 1800, Georgia under King George XII incorporates into the Russian Empire. The reigning Bagratini dynasty, one of the longest Christian dynasties dating back to 6th century AD, converts to an aristocratic family while retaining the prince titles for its descendants. Georgia will be central in the ongoing conflicts with the neighboring Turkish Ottoman Empire and Persian Safavid Empire. In 1917, Georgia is declared an independent democratic republic, but will be invaded and join the Soviet Union in 1921. And now that's the localized history for one line of royalty. What seems not merely localized, but rather ongoing, are the complications of royals marrying for love outside approved alliances and other factors. Already within our story, we are heading to the looming British succession crisis with the future King Edward VIII, Duke of Windsor, formerly Prince David, Prince of Wales, on the eve of World War II, as well as the issues remaining in the defunct Romanov dynasty with later claimants and issues regarding morganatic marriages. And now we can add another to the list. Similar to the Prince of Wales title for the British throne and essentially the Crown Prince or Hereditary Prince, the Prince of Asturias is the designated title for the heir apparent and heir presumptive to the Spanish throne regardless of which dynasty is in power. The title originates in 1388 when King John I of Castile bestows the title on his firstborn son, Henry, to prevent future dynastic struggles with other potential heirs and claimants for the crown of Castile. When the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon are united, the Prince of Asturias becomes the primary title, and as such, the title remains through the Habsburg and later Bourbon dynasties. The Bourbon dynasty is related to the last and present-day monarchy. Females, too, can inherit the title Princess of Asturias. In history, there are several princesses of Asturias, but some are displaced when a male heir is then born. By the way, Barbara Hutton's best friend and Prince Alexis, Mdivani's secret fiery lover, now Countess Silvia de Rivas de Castellan, has ties to Spanish King Alfonso XIII, whom Silvia's father served faithfully, but without enough benefit to improve her family's circumstances after the Wall Street crash of 1929. Despite being deposed in 1931, King Alfonso XIII of Spain still insists that the line of succession remains clear. When Prince, or in Spanish title, Infante Alfonso abdicates his place in line for the basically non-existent throne, his brother, Infante Jaime, shortly thereafter also renounces his rights to the throne due to being deaf as a result from a childhood operation. Thus, on June 21, 1933, the title is then passed to third son, Prince Infante Juan, who would have been titled King Juan III had he succeeded. It will be his son who will become King Juan Carlos I when the crown is restored in Spain in 1975. Prince Alfonso will later divorce his Cuban commoner wife in 1937 and turn around and marry another commoner in 1937. He will die in a car accident in 1938. In 1941, Prince Jaime claims to be the legitimate male heir to the House of Capet and head of the House of Bourbon, both related to the French throne. And Jaime will also hold the title Duke of Anjou. In 1949, Jaime will also try to retract his renunciation to the Spanish throne. In 1975, Spain restores the monarchy, and the Prince of Asturias title is bestowed by the royal decree of 1977 on Prince Felipe, the future and now present King Felipe VI. The title, Prince of Asturias, will also be acknowledged in the 1978 Spanish Constitution as the heir to the throne. The current title holder is Princess Leonor, daughter of King Felipe VI. As previously mentioned in another episode, the Prince of Wales title dates back to 1160s, and the longest-held title owner is now King Charles III of England, who he himself had struggles with getting spousal approval. While the situations with the Spanish throne or Prince Alexis Mdivani have little consequence and are more benign, there have been times the issues surrounding marriage and love have resulted in much darker and disastrous circumstances. Frustrations and thwarted love and royalty have a long lingering history. Further back, another heir apparent of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Crown Prince Rudolf, committed suicide with his lover, Baroness Maria von Wetzera, at the Meierling hunting lodge in 1889. His death will eventually lead to the potential succession of his cousin, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who himself, upon becoming the heir presumptive, had to renounce the right of his children for succession due to his own morganatic marriage. It will be his and his wife's assassinations which kick off World War I that will result in the overall decline of monarchies. The Meierling incident is covered in several works, including a British ballet in 1978. In 2001, Nepalese Crown Prince Dipendra massacres his royal family, where 9 family members are killed, and the prince himself is declared king while in a coma, only to die days later from his own self-inflicted gunshot wound. His motives are unclear, but one persistent rumor implies that it came from his family's rejection in preventing marriage to the woman he loved of lower-class birth. The Nepalese monarchy will be abolished during the 2006 revolution. On more serious matters, in May 1933, adjoining the Hutton-Mdivani engagement, articles are popping up Hitler's right hand, the Prime Minister of Prussia, Captain Goering, having a secret meeting with Mussolini. War is looming on the horizon. It also hints that people know something is up, but no one could imagine what all the future would hold. Frivolous disputes pale in comparison to the darkness that lies ahead, but even in the lesser circumstances, we are reminded how fragile and dangerous life can become. Section 3, Contemporary and Personal Relevance. As children, how many of us would fantasize about being princesses rescued or knights fighting off dragons? How many hours would we spend in make-believe play to be anyone and or anywhere else in the world? As teens and adults, some of those dreams might evolve into more sophisticated romantic love stories or about magnitudes of wealth or fame. It might be more modern versions of old tropes, like movie star, rock star, sports hero, or tech entrepreneur. Generally, the dreams are about elevation from our lower or more mundane standards. How rarely do we weigh them down with the banal realities or the darker elements, some of which we would never directly imagine, like threats to our lives. Of course, there are those always willing to poke holes in others' dreams, people to whom we tend to avoid revealing our secret desires or dreams. It's kind of odd then to think that someone who has something people covet would then either covet some of the same things or even be willing to give up what is possibly coveted for another item on the list. Then again, the hardest thing to give up is often illusion. More acceptable pretenders of today are likely to appear in the social media influencer culture, which definitely follows the fake it till you make it philosophy and attitude towards things. And if someone eventually makes it, they get further validated. And if they fail, well, it just depends on how they fail as to whether and to what magnitude they might get skewered. Then there's the strange dynamic of Prince Harry of England and his wife Meghan Markle in all their efforts to leave the British monarchy while pretending to engage in royal activities and other failed ventures like Nigeria and their already flailing newest lifestyle brand. Once again, definitions of pseudo-royal and royalty and their privileges are minor distractions in a world where more chaotic and dangerous situations loom ahead. Life changes fast, and yet human nature has many consistencies. Heirs, heiresses, royals, and whatnot are all playing the games of love, life, and fortune. Only time will prove who wins and loses in the end. Enjoy looking at modern royalty, especially the British royal family? Then check out Royally Obsessed, which has both a podcast and Instagram account which keeps regular updates, especially on British royals. The Instagram account provides daily photo montages of everyone's favorites, and the podcast covers weekly topics of royalty. Who says we still don't have interest in real-life fairy tales? Links in the notes and transcript. If you enjoy As the Money Burns, then please share, like, and subscribe. Next, when we return to As the Money Burns, it's another season of international sports competition. So where has one tennis star disappeared to this time? Until then, As the Money Burns is an original podcast written, produced, and voiced by Nikki Woodard based on historical research. Archival music has been provided by Past Perfect Vintage Music. Check out their website at www.pastperfect.com. Please come visit us at As the Money Burns via GoodPods X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, now Meta, or Instagram. Transcripts, timeline, episode guide, and character bios are available at asthemoneyburns.com.